The official story claims Lynette Hooker accidentally fell from an 8-foot dinghy into the dark waters of the Bahamas. But what the U.S. Coast Guard just found, hidden inside a secured warehouse, completely shatters her husband Brian Hooker's timeline. The evidence doesn't point to a tragic accident in the Sea of Abaco. It points to a highly calculated disappearance. What investigators discovered missing from that dinghy changes the entire trajectory of this case. And the timeline issue? It points to a 25-year cycle that was captured on camera right before they set sail. But the evidence everyone was focused on wasn't the real problem. If you want every verified development in this case as it happens, subscribe now, because this story is still moving. For the past 2 months, Brian Hooker's version of events was the only narrative available. According to his initial statements to authorities, he and his wife Lynette were returning to their 46-foot Morgan keelboat, the Soulmate, when a sudden weather event caused Lynette to fall overboard. Brian claimed the keys to the dinghy fell into the water with her. He stated he lost an oar. He told investigators he was forced to row for 8 agonizing hours in the pitch black just to reach the shore. That was the established narrative. But the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service and the Royal Bahamian Police Force have now seized the dinghy, and what they documented aboard that small vessel directly contradicts the timeline of a helpless husband drifting at sea. Investigators secured the 8-foot dinghy and immediately recognized a glaring discrepancy. The highly specialized backup outboard engine, an NT-300, which was heavily documented as part of the dinghy's main inventory, is completely missing. The heavy piece of machinery is gone. The batteries that power it, which store critical telemetric data, are also gone. Investigators are now working under the allegation that this heavy engine was used as a deep-water anchor. But the missing hardware is only a fraction of the geographical contradiction. To understand what actually happened on the water, you have to look at the digital footprint left behind. And the digital footprint reveals a path that defies the laws of nature. When federal investigators extracted the hidden GPS data from Brian's electronic devices, the coordinates did not align with a vessel drifting helplessly on the tide. The data shows him situated deep inside the thick mangrove lines of Elbow Key, at the exact time he claimed to be stranded at sea. Tides push. Currents pull. They do not execute calculated navigational maneuvers. But the path of the dinghy, traced by investigators, shows a route that goes directly against the current. The data indicates the dinghy crossed from Elbow Key, moved past the north tip of Lovers, and then executed a sharp left turn to head south down the coast of Lovers. Then the vessel suddenly altered course again, heading west, back toward Marsh Harbor. Throw anything into the water and watch it float. There are no sharp, deliberate turns in a drifting current. This geographical anomaly is compounded by what multiple local witnesses observed from the shoreline. At approximately 9:30 p.m. on the night Lynette vanished, residents near the Hopetown anchorage reported hearing a massive, heavy splash echoing across the water. Immediately following that sound, witnesses observed bright emergency flares piercing the night sky. But these flares were not fired vertically to signal for rescue teams. Witnesses explicitly stated the flares were fired horizontally, low across the surface of the water. The trajectory suggests they were being used to illuminate the immediate area, to check if anyone was watching in the dark. Why would someone in need of immediate rescue fire a flare horizontally? And how does a man claiming to be helplessly adrift manage to navigate a precise multi-turn route through shallow waters? The answer lies in the suspect's professional background. Brian Hooker was previously employed by AT&T. Court records and employment history reveal he was fired from his corporate position for secretly rigging a system to mask the GPS tracking device on his company work van. He possesses the exact technical knowledge required to manipulate digital footprints. The case appeared to be localized to the Bahamian authorities. The Royal Bahamian Police Force lacked the extensive resources required to process the complex digital data, and Brian Hooker was briefly held for questioning before being released as a free man. It seemed the jurisdictional hurdles would prevent any further forensic deep dives. Until the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norella arrived from Miami, bringing specialized dive teams and federal agents. They didn't just review the Bohemian reports, they took physical custody of the evidence. And what the Coast Guard transported back to Florida was the Soulmate itself, towing the 46-foot sailboat first to Fort Pierce and then to Fort Lauderdale for exhaustive forensic testing. Do you think the missing NT-300 engine proves deliberate concealment, or does the lack of a recovered body keep the timeline open to interpretation? If the upcoming forensic filings change what we covered today, you'll want to be here for it. The forensic testing in Fort Lauderdale marks a massive escalation. Coast Guard investigators have been seen aboard the dinghy with cadaver dogs. They are not merely looking for signs of an accident. This is now operating as a suspected murder investigation. And the physical search is expanding into genetic mapping. Lynette's daughter, Carly Aleshworth, recently provided her DNA to the Coast Guard. DNA has also been collected from Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, and her stepfather, Bill Hamlet. This collection process, referred to by the family as DNA Day, serves a dual forensic purpose. First, it provides a genetic reference to identify any remains recovered from the Sea of Abaco. Second, it creates elimination samples. If investigators locate biological material on a piece of evidence aboard the Soulmate, like a fishing knife, they need to mathematically eliminate the family members who have previously been aboard the vessel. The focus on forensics is running parallel to a sweeping background investigation by the FBI. Agents are currently moving door to door in the couple's hometown. They have secured an interview with Jordan Plants, a neighbor who lived directly across the street from Brian and Lynette. The public image presented on the couple's YouTube channel depicted a happy, adventurous life at sea. But the reality documented by those who lived nearby was drastically different. Jordan Plants confirmed to federal agents that Lynette was trapped in a 25-year cycle of severe domestic violence. The situation was so volatile that Lynette would flee their home for several months out of the year, relocating to her mother's house in Florida just to maintain her physical safety. The neighbor has now provided investigators with archival Amazon Ring security camera footage, offering a visual record of the household's dynamics in the weeks leading up to the trip. This wasn't a sudden tragedy on the water. It was the culmination of a documented pattern. The sailboat trip to the Bahamas was allegedly a final attempt to salvage a relationship that had reached a breaking point. After Lynette vanished, Brian Hooker did not remain in the Bahamas to assist with the expansive search efforts. He quickly fled back to the United States. His stated reason to local authorities was that his mother was terminally ill and required his immediate presence. He promised to return to continue the search once she was stabilized. It was a perfectly valid reason for a grieving husband to leave an active investigation zone. Until the FBI contacted Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, who revealed the truth about that departure. Darlene confirmed to investigators that Brian's mother is not sick. The medical emergency was allegedly a calculated fabrication designed to secure his exit from the islands before the Royal Bahamian Police Force could lock down his passport. He is currently a free man, his exact location unknown to Lynette's family. But the family has provided investigators with a crucial piece of geographical intelligence. Brian Hooker reportedly has a brother who owns a remote cabin in the mountains of California. The property allegedly operates entirely off the grid, with no electricity and no cellular service. It is a location known to very few people, providing a potential sanctuary for someone attempting to evade federal surveillance. But with this location now known to the FBI, the concept of remaining off the grid is rapidly evaporating. Bill Hamlet, Lynette's stepfather of 38 years, summarized the family's position clearly. He stated that Brian operates one step ahead, using diversions to control the narrative. The family is not disappointed that the initial dives did not recover Lynette's remains, because they understand that the absence of a body does not prevent a prosecution. The strategy of using a vast body of water to conceal evidence mirrors the procedural footprint of the Richard Debate case in Connecticut, where digital telemetry and device GPS data ultimately dismantled an elaborate home invasion alibi, proving that digital silence can be just as incriminating as a physical confession. The digital data from the Soulmate. the precise route of the dinghy, and the missing NT-300 engine are forming a chain of circumstantial evidence that requires no physical remains to be compelling. Brian Hooker's technical expertise allowed him to manipulate GPS on a work van, but out on the Sea of Abaco, the ocean recorded every turn he made. If this case matters to you, the next development is one you won't want to miss. Whether the forensic sweep of the Soulmate in Fort Lauderdale will uncover biological evidence that directly ties the missing engine to the events of that night, and what the Coast Guard will do with that data is a question the unsealed warrants have not yet answered.